Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Friday, March 3rd. This is Africa 54. Nigeria's President-elect Bola Tinubu is calling for peace and togetherness, but two major opposition parties vow to challenge the vote and say the election was rigged. Tunisian President Kais Saied's call for a crackdown on migrants from sub-Saharan Africa forces Guinea and Ivory Coast to repatriate its citizens from the country. And in our entertainment report, we'll have an exciting performance from the Mandingo Ambassadors. All that and much more coming up on Africa 54. Nigeria's Electoral Commission has declared Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the winner of the presidential election. However, the two major opposition parties say the results were rigged and are vowing to challenge the results in court. Tinubu is calling on the parties to embrace peace and work together with his government. Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja.
The man known as the godfather of Nigeria's Lagos state is now on his way to the country's highest office, winning 37% or nearly 9 million of the total votes. Bola Tinubu emerged victorious in the hotly contested presidential contest. He takes over from Muhammadu Buhari, who's stepping down after the constitutional limit of 2 terms, marked by widespread insecurity and economic problems. But for some Abuja residents, it's not the fresh start they had hoped for.
On the 25th of February, we voted our choice. We do not vote for Tinubu. Women can no longer farm. There's no food in the market. Nigerians are hungry.
Tinubu's victory is being challenged by the opposition, People's Democratic Party and Labour Party. They allege the weekend election was rigged, with many Nigerians denied the chance to vote. Observers say last Saturday's presidential election was flawed by long delays and technical glitches with newly introduced voter accreditation machines. But INEC said the problem, though regrettable, was not an attempt to manipulate votes. Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi held a press briefing Thursday.
And I assure you that good people of Nigeria, that will explore all legal and peaceful options to reclaim our mandate. We won the election, and we will prove it to Nigerians.
Tinubu has called for unity and wants the opposition to work with him. The opposition parties want a redo, but political analysts say that is only possible if they can prove enough votes were manipulated to sway the outcome. Experts say the new president faces a daunting task. Nigeria is battling Islamist militants and armed kidnappers, mostly in the north. The country's economy is also suffering from high inflation and shortages of fuel and hard cash. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Guinea and Ivory Coast are repatriating citizens who want to leave Tunisia after President Kais Saied called for a crackdown on migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. The first flight with 49 Guinean nationals has already arrived in Conakry. Ivory Coast says it has identified at least 500 Ivorians who want to leave Tunisia. The African Union denounced Saied's initial language as racialized. Saied later issued a second statement denying being racist. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters have marched in Tunis to protest against racism after President Saied ordered the crackdown on migrants. He has told his security forces to stop all illegal migration and expel all undocumented migrants, prompting a campaign of arrests that caused widespread fear among sub-Saharan Africans as well as Black Tunisians. For more insight into the crackdown on sub-Saharan African migrants in Tunisia, I'm joined from here in Washington by Monji Dawadi, president of the Tunisian United Network. Mr. Dawadi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, President Saied is not new to controversy. He is known to stifle any dissent within the country. He cracks down on Tunisians, freedoms as well. What do you make of this latest crackdown on black sub-Saharan Africans and even blacks in Tunisia itself?
Well, this is just another chapter of a newly formed dictatorship in Tunisia. Unfortunately, we thought that these days were behind us, that after the revolution and that ended up with the earlier dictators in Abidin Bani leaving Tunisia. Tunisia is embarked on a democracy transition period. It was marked with a lot of divisions among the political parties, marked with a lot of fragmentation within the parliament. So the system kind of did not deliver on the economic front. And so that opened the door for somebody like Kais Saied, who is not known in the political scene in Tunisia. He's an outsider. He does not belong to any political party or family. So he came in, rode this wave of populism, promised that he's going to fight corruption, then ended up on July 25th, after he was elected by a majority of the vote in 2019. In July 25th of 2021, he basically staged the coup in Tunisia, and he took over all the parliament, all the state apparatus, and now he is marching to crack down on all opposition. Why am I saying this? Because this leads us to the fact that he ran out of enemies, probably, trying to blame for his failure to deliver on any of the promises he made to the people. So now he goes after the minority, the immigrants, who
what about,
Tunisia,
right.
But
What about the African Union language saying that Kais Saied is being racist? Does that go far enough to restore human dignity to thousands of those migrants?
I think the statement by the African Union maybe sets the stage for the international community to pay attention to this big problem that was created, because they kind of like looked the other way while Kais Saied was dismantling the state apparatus and destroying democracy in the country. So now they're waking into a racist rhetoric, attacks on immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa. I don't think the statement goes far enough, because I think the statement should demand protection for these immigrants in Tunisia, because some of them are facing really danger, street violence, evictions from their homes, being denied basic services into public transportation and hospitals. These are things we have not seen in Tunisia. As a Tunisian, I'm shocked. I'm ashamed that this government and some of the other institutions are allowing this to happen. And I think the international community needs to come down hard. They need to demand that we do not deal any business with Kais Saied. He's seeking a $1.9 billion from IMF loan. I think that should be held back until we see some real changes. Number one, stop this crackdown on immigrants, provide security, safety for them, release the political prisoners, and then rebuild democracy in the country.
Dawadi Monji, thank you very much for your insight. We'll revisit this issue definitely.
Thank you.
Monji Dawadi is the president of Tunisian United Network. French President Emmanuel Macron is visiting Angola Friday after stopping in Gabon, where he pledged $52.9 million for forest preservation. After leaving Angola, Macron is traveling to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Congo-Brazzaville. In Luanda, Macron chaired an economic forum attended by more than 50 French companies and focused on agriculture. Macron's impending trip to the DRC is sparking mixed reaction in Kinshasa. Members of parliament, scientists, and businessmen are enthused. VOA's Anastasie Tudiesh spoke to people on the streets of the capital, Kinshasa, to get their thoughts on Macron's visit.
French President Emmanuel Macron's first visit to DRC sparks mixed reactions here in Kinshasa. Members of parliament, scientists, businessmen have shared their enthusiasm and hope. However, in the streets of the capital, the energy is different.
Macron is a great president. We value and respect him. Let him come and give us his position, and let him put an end to the war in the East. The responsibility of the Congo is first of all ours, and we will deal with it among ourselves. But first, France needs to take responsibility, since she's part of those who support Rwanda and the rebellion in the eastern part of the country.
If I had the power to do so, I would mobilize the population to go out on the road and welcome him with Russian flags, to show him that he has lost the opportunity he had to play a crucial role in supporting us while we were going through hard times, when our Russian brothers have. Our country has lost more than 12 million people, and when you hear 12 million dead in a country, it should make you think, deepen your reflections, prompt action. I will never appreciate him ever in my whole life.
I'm not for it. He is not welcome in our country. Many people say that DRC must take care of itself. No. So what? Are we different from Ukraine or Iraq or other countries like Syria? No. We are in the United Nations, the UN that literally stands for United Nations. So why are we treated this way? Why does this not apply to us?
People in the streets of Kinshasa talking to VOA's Anastasie Tudiesh today. In part 2 of Hedy Adams' interview with Lord Mark Malloch Brown, president of the Open Society Foundations, he discusses why some African countries are wary of supporting the West over Ukraine and is calling on Western nations to show leadership on issues that are important to African nations and that don't involve Russia's war in Ukraine.
We've seen the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov paying multiple visits to the African continent. He's been warmly received in some quarters, and of course the Russians know that they do have sympathizers in significant parts of Africa. What is the unwillingness by much of the global South to back the Western alliance's stance on Ukraine say about geopolitics, and how worried is the West about what it's seeing in parts of the global South?
You know, I have a lot of sympathy for those African countries which are wary of throwing their lot in with the West over Ukraine. First, I don't think there's any doubt that nearly every African country, with the exception of Eritrea, recognizes that this was an illegitimate invasion, and that for Africa, where the sovereignty of borders is an absolutely key principle to stability and peace on the continent, that the behaviors of Russia by this invasion has breached the #1 rule as far as Africa is concerned. So that's not really the issue that's in doubt. What's in question is the way that the West has allowed the Ukraine conflict to consume all the diplomatic oxygen, all the economic assistance available, or a huge portion of it, and to not leave enough to address issues in Africa. And Africa is in the grip of what's been called the polycrisis, debt crises in countries like Zambia and Ghana, and prospectively many other countries as well. And issues of fuel price, food prices, the reordering of supply chains in a way that is disrupting economic production in industrial production in many parts of Africa. Given all this, the lack of real attention and commitment is key. And they look forward to an issue like climate, which is a problem not of their making, but where the impact is felt heavily in Africa now. And they wonder, where's the Western leadership on that? Where's the carrying through on the pledge of $100 billion a year of climate finance, and let's get that up to the trillions? They see sort of mealy-mouthed efforts to squeeze a bit more out of the World Bank or the African Development Bank, but they don't see the same kind of concerted leadership to address that agenda that they see to address Ukraine. If the West showed that response, some of what they find distasteful, and I would cite, for example, it was impossible in Munich not to hear a lot of complaints about South Africa's military exercises with the Russians. I'm sure it was considered an easy way to pull the West's nose, but it went down like a lead balloon in Munich. But I think the onus is on the West to show it's a good, reliable friend, and to discourage South Africa or others reaching out for fair weather friends who don't have the same economic means to provide support and who instead are just into the provision of some very dangerous security support through the Wagner Group and its ilk. So, you know, I think this is a time to really, for the West really to get on top of an Africa strategy, which is one of partnership with Africa, one appropriate for today, not the past, and to put the resource behind it.
That was Lord Mark Malloch Brown, president of the Open Society Foundation, speaking to VOA's Hedy Adams. Still to come for today's On Entertainment, we'll have a performance from the Mandingo Ambassadors. Stay with us.
Although it is her first official trip to Africa as the U.S. First Lady, this is Jill Biden's sixth trip to the continent. This month, she traveled to Namibia and Kenya as part of President Joe Biden's broader effort to strengthen U.S. ties with African countries. On the next episode of Our Voices, we will look at Jill Biden's visit to the continent and examine what it means for the average person in Africa as she hopes to further empower women and young people. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
From around the world, let's go.
In other news, contaminated cough and paracetamol syrups imported into Gambia almost certainly caused the deaths of 66 children due to an acute kidney injury, according to an investigation led by the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention and Gambian scientists. An explosion at a crude oil pipeline Friday killed at least 12 people stealing oil in southern Nigeria's Emohua district. A civil defense spokesman for Emohua in Rivers State, the heart of Africa's biggest oil industry, says the incident was reported around 4:30 a.m. local time. And Ugandan members of the LGBT community report experiencing a wave of discrimination and violence resulting from a recent parliamentary announcement of an investigation into the alleged promotion of homosexuality in schools across the East African nation. Friday, March 3rd, is World Wildlife Day, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora turns 50. Its goal is to ensure that international trade in animals and plants does not threaten their survival in the wild. But how effective has it been in protecting one of the most endangered species on the planet, the pangolin? VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has our report.
How many pangolins are there in the wild? The answer is as elusive as the nocturnal scaly anteater, the most trafficked mammal in the world. In Uganda, conservationists are using artificial intelligence cameras to track them down and get real-time alerts of imminent threats.
The AI technology essentially can send us an email within a few seconds of seeing a pangolin to tell us exactly where that pangolin is. So it enables us to focus on specific areas to prioritize our conservation efforts.
It's a race against the clock. Pangolins, one of the world's most endangered animals, are being poached primarily for their scales, which some believe have medicinal properties, although without robust scientific evidence. Illegal trade keeps happening even though all 8 species of the pangolin family have been assigned the highest level of protections under the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. CITES Secretary General Yvonne Higuero spoke with VOA via Skype.
In Africa generally is the source country these days, going through the transit countries, often Singapore, and to destination countries like Vietnam, like China.
CITES bans the commercial trade of all pangolin species internationally, with few exceptions. But each member country adopts their own national laws. In that context, it can only urge countries to do more when it comes to enforcement and accountability.
The punishments have to be much more severe, punished with serious jail time, with serious fines.
Citizens who browse the internet can report suspicious listings of pangolin products for sale to the Coalition to End Wildlife Trafficking Online, which works with tech companies to remove them. But finding concrete evidence of illicit trade can be tricky, says analyst Ellen Tyra with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies.
The actual transactions or negotiations for the sale of wildlife might even be happening in direct messages, which cannot be viewed externally.
In the end, the most effective conservation programs are community-based, according to Adam Payman, Director of Wildlife Programs for Humane Society International.
In Africa, for example, they're really working with their communities and instead of just policing them, really sort of enforce the idea that pangolins should not be targeted as bushmeat.
Payman stressed that pangolins can eat up to 70 million ants and termites in a year. Protecting them is vital to prevent the collapse of the greater ecosystems which they inhabit. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for Entertainment Report, and joining us now is Heather Maxwell, host of VOA's Music Time in Africa radio program. Heather, welcome back.
Thank you, Esther. You know, I discovered earlier this year the Mandingo Ambassadors in New York City. The two frontmen, Mamadi Kouyaté and Mamadi Kourouma, performed for me there in our VOA studio. Now, you've seen some of this performance already, but this particular piece, which, as you'll hear Kouyaté explain, is a Ghanaian all-time favorite. Can you play a song from Bembaya Jazz?
Yes, the song we play is Kamaramuso.
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 What does that mean?
No, Kamaramuso is you have a different family name in the Manding. Bon, the Kamara is a lot of people named Kamara. Bon, you have one lady, the Bembea play night time before they come in. This lady do the cook the rice for them. They eat for free. Bon, the singer named Abakar Demba Kamara, he died in 1973. Bon, Demba sing this music for this lady. Kamaramuso, Kamara lady. Everybody like this song in Guinea, Kamaramuso.
that's our entertainment for today. Now back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Heather. Be sure to watch Heather Maxwell's Entertainment Report every Friday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show this Friday. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, have a great weekend.